Welcome to Getaways, the show where you lot call the shots.
And this week we're in Puglia in southern Italy.
On our website, we asked you to share your top travel tips for this part of the world, and you've been emailing and texting your suggestions.
Puglia, also known as Apulia, is one of Italy's lesser-known holiday destinations. With its olive groves, whitewashed towns and unforgiving heat, it can seem more Greek than Italian.
But when it comes to the food, make no mistake.
We're in Italy.
In this week's programme, we visit a unique town, find some fabulous food, venture underground to explore an impressive cave system, and I'm taking a short break closer to home to discover what's on offer around Strangford Lough in County Down.
To get to Puglia, there's a 3.5-hour flight from Dublin into the city of Bari, the region's capital and the main gateway for holidaymakers arriving in this part of Italy. Our trip to Puglia begins with a visit to one of the region's main tourist attractions. It's a town that looks extraordinary. This is Alberobello, famous for its whitewashed buildings known as Trullo houses. There are Trullo houses dotted all over the centre of the region, but a lot of you left comments on our website saying we should come to the capital of Trullo country, the village of Alberobello. Samantha Flaherty from Galway was so impressed with this quirky architecture, she described it as a magical place. And you're not wrong, Samantha. When you walk around, you do kind of expect to bump into a wizard or a wee hobbit or something. It's fantastic. A Trullo is a simple, dry-stoned, walled, conical construction with a domed roof topped by a cone or pinnacle. Now, you've obviously heard of dry stone walls from back home, but this is taking it to another level. Now, the land was given free, but to avoid paying housing tax, the residents built these houses without mortar. Basically, the stones are freestanding. The most important part is this kind of conical sort of stone at the top, known as the keystone. You take that out, the whole thing collapses. But there's no chance of that happening because this entire site is now UNESCO protected as a World Heritage Site.
The original Trulli were basic shelters for peasant farmers who worked the land around Alberobello. There are around 1,000 Trulli here, subdivided into 2 neighbourhoods. One remains residential with private homes, and the other is full of Trulli that have been converted into shops, selling souvenirs and local crafts. And
Not only do they look a little like igloos, they work in the same way too, keeping the place warm in the winter and keeping the sun out in the summer.
Puglia has 2 coastlines, one on the Ionian Sea and the other on the Adriatic. In fact, Puglia has more shoreline than any other region in Italy.
There are a huge variety of beaches all the way along the coast, with plenty of rocky little coves where you can take a dip. The further south you head, there are more wild beaches because they're protected from overdevelopment. So you can find a little place that's completely isolated and it feels like you have the beach to yourself.
From April to October, days spent at the beach are a way of life for Italians. This beach at Monopoli is free to use but rocky in parts.
But for a few euro, you can always go to a Lido or a beach club. It's very family friendly, the water is clean and safe, and you will find plenty of food, drinks and water sports on offer. This is the Lido Pellarosa, which was recommended by Ruth and Tony from Dublin. It costs €16 to rent a sun lounger and an umbrella for a day.
Puglia really is a hidden gem. And another of the striking towns in this region is Ostuni, or La Città Bianca.
Ostuni is one of the most beautiful cities in southern Italy. Perched high on a hill, it's surrounded by white defensive walls and whitewashed houses and is known simply as the White City. With a coastline full of beaches, it's the perfect place to base your holiday.
Ostuni's streets and alleyways are full of small gift and craft shops where you might pick up leather goods and antiques.
La Città Bianca has had a very dramatic and indeed violent history. It was completely destroyed, rebuilt by the Greeks, occupied by the Romans, then the Ostrogoths, then the Normans. It was attacked by the Turks and sold to a tyrant. But it is the churches and the castles built in the Middle Ages that have survived intact that dominate the landscape here. We recommend you make your way to the top of the old town, where the cathedral on the tiny square is a rare example of Gothic architecture in a land full of Romanesque churches.
Away from the coast, the landscape is dominated by olive groves. And according to Steffi Capozza from Dublin, Puglia has the best quality olive oil in Italy.
In Puglia, you don't just get to eat the food, you get to experience the culture that produces it. And nothing defines this region more than the 60 million olive trees dotted all the way around from north to south. The sheer size and volume of trees is amazing, but some of them are actually over thousands of years old.
I met up with Armando Balastrazi to find out more about the tradition and heritage of olive growing in this region.
When you drive around Puglia, there are olive trees everywhere. The biggest olive trees I've ever seen, they look really old, but they're still abundant. They're still creating olives, right?
The Apulia is the only one region in Italy, 21 region. No river, no lake, no sweet water. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months without rain. Everything died, everything yellow. The olive trees survive, absolutely, no problem. We say no Apulian men have seen dying and olive trees because we normally live only 100 years. A day, 2,000 years. Never died and never stopped to produce.
As well as running the olive grove, Armando also owns a masseria, a converted farmhouse where you can come to stay.
Most of the masserias in this area have been transformed and converted into luxury accommodation for tourists to stay in. With their own vineyards, olive trees and vegetable gardens, guests get to eat the produce grown on the estate. It's a really authentic Apulian experience that's utterly unpretentious and totally indulgent.
One major reason you're likely to visit Puglia is to treat yourself to the area's amazing food. The region is known for its cookery schools, where foodies can indulge in their passion for all things pasta and so much more. Next on my list of sights in Puglia are the caves of Castellana, found half an hour southeast of Bari. Tara Burns from Dunleary was just one of you who recommended visiting the caves.
This is the entrance cave La Grave. It was largely undiscovered up until 1938. There's a giant hole on the surface that people knew about, but they were terrified to enter because of the mist and the bats that came from below the surface. Back then, it was known as the entrance to hell.
This is one of Italy's most spectacular natural underground networks, and it's one of the area's biggest tourist attractions. Over 15 million tourists from all over the world have visited these caves. You can take various walking tours of the cave system, which will cost from €10. All along the route there are columns, stalagmites and stalactites. It's like a great underground cathedral.
This is the White Cave and it's the highlight of the tour. It's apparently the whitest and the brightest cave in the entire world, and it's pretty magical.
Coming up, we visit a city known as the Florence of the South, and I take a short break to Castle Ward on Strangford Lough. This week we're in Puglia in southern Italy to discover more about a destination that's off the beaten tourist track. So far we've toured the magical town of Alberobello to see its quirky Trulli, visited some of the world's oldest olive groves, and we've gone underground to explore the magnificent caves of Castellana. But before we return to Puglia, I'm taking a short break closer to home. I've come to the very tip of the Ards Peninsula in County Down to find out more about what's on offer along the shores of Strangford Lough, the largest sea inlet in the British Isles. This is the southern end of Strangford Lough in the pretty town of Portaferry. This part behind me is called the Narrows and connects Portaferry here and the place I'm headed for over there. The Strangford Ferry is the oldest continual ferry service in Ireland and connects Portaferry and Strangford, with regular crossings every half hour. It takes a breezy 10 minutes. As you'd imagine, there's a strong sailing tradition here, which is in full flow every summer during the Portaferry Gala and the Narrows Regatta Series. Strangford Village is popular for day trippers looking for a hearty lunch or a pint of the black stuff. And just beyond Strangford Village is where I'm headed for, towards one of the most famous addresses on the lough. Castle Ward is a walled domain running along the lough. Its 820 acres are made up of wooded areas, landscape gardens and historic buildings. The centrepiece has got to be this 18th century mansion once home to the Ward family. It was built by the first Viscount Bangor and his wife, who had, let's just say, very different views on things. To find out more about what makes this house so intriguing, I met up with tour guide Claire Rose.
It's a gorgeous house just in terms of its architecture, but the special thing about here at Castle Ward is the fact that it's split directly in half between the two sides of the house that built it. So Bernard Ward, the first Viscount of Bangor, and his wife, Lady Anne Ward, who came over from Bath. So they didn't agree on a lot of things, but one thing they did compromise on with this house. So one side of the house, inside out, up down, is his classical Georgian style, and the other side, inside out, up down, is her Gothic side.
This is the entrance hall. It's classical Georgian in style, but this way it's a very different story. The boudoir. This is probably the most notable room on the Gothic side, and it's quite amazing. Same fabric all over the walls, on the curtains. Look at that ceiling. It's amazing. There are guided tours available in the afternoons in summer. A 50-minute tour costs £6.50. Make sure you don't miss this unique two-sided house. In the grounds you'll find the original stable yard with coach houses and even a Victorian laundry. There's also a gift shop and cafe. And the historic barn and farmyard at the back of the estate have plenty for kids with indoor and outdoor play areas. And if this place looks rather familiar, it's because Castle Ward was used as the location for Winterfell in the hit series Game of Thrones. And there's a new activity to try here, as 34 kilometres of new cycling trails have just opened. I'm taking the shore trail today, which brings me right along the edge of the lough, and it's geared towards families, so apparently it's not too difficult. Let's see. There are 3 colour-coded trails to help you decide which track best suits you. The All-Ability Trail I'm following is flat and wide, suitable for even the rustiest of riders. Cycling is a perfect way to take in the views of the estate, and they are serious. Around every single corner, there's something wildly different. If you're looking for something a little more difficult, try the Boundary Trail, which has climbs and takes a bit more skill. This is Audley's Castle, also seen in Game of Thrones and the movie Dracula Untold. It's pretty cool. It's like I'm actually on a film set. If you want to stay in Castle Ward overnight, then you can try some camping pods. A standard pod costs €53 a night, and you need to bring your own bedding. There's also a site for pitching tents or pulling up a caravan.
This week, we're in Puglia, in southern Italy. We've been exploring the region's dramatic coastline and whitewashed towns. Its ancient olive groves, spectacular cave systems, and we visited magical towns such as Alberto Bello to see its famous trulli. Our next stop in Puglia is Lecce, home to some of the best Baroque architecture in Italy. The soft, pinkish limestone of Lecce is easy to work with. From the 15th century, Lecce was one of the most important cities in southern Italy. By the 17th century, its buildings and monuments were covered in ornate Baroque carvings. Lecce is a small town in the south of Puglia, and for its size, it's well known for its high concentration in Baroque architecture, mainly in its 100 churches. I mean, you literally cannot turn a corner without seeing some example of chiseled magnificence. So much so that Lecce has become known as the Florence of the South. But one thing Lecce doesn't have that Florence suffers from are the crowds. This Puglian town is much easier to navigate than its Tuscan cousin.
By the end of the Baroque era, when their skills were no longer required on grand buildings, the impoverished craftsmen turned to cheaper and more accessible materials, such as clay and paper, to create smaller objects. This led to the tradition of producing toys and dolls out of papier-mâché.
Papier-mâché is generally something we associate with children's birthday parties or maybe art projects in school. But here in Lecce, a tradition has turned into a little industry. It started back in the 1700s when they created religious iconography, little figurines for cribs, and they still do that, and they're available here, but they also have local peasant figures, bouquets of flowers and little clowns, and they're all starting from 10 quid, so you can have your very own piece of Lecce art, and it lasts forever.
In every town and village in Puglia, you'll find a great restaurant or cafe, which makes it a fantastic place for a foodie tour. I've made a special visit to another little town, Polignano a Mare, especially to visit Mint, a restaurant which you recommended for bringing a veggie spin to traditional Italian cooking.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, I've headed to Cisternino for a very different carnivorous experience. Lisa Barrett from Dublin told us we should come here and try its famous grilled meat.
Lovely, thank you very much. The temptation when you're on holiday in Italy is to eat pasta and bread and drink wine for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and to basically roll home. But there are alternatives, really light, wonderful produce, and Puglia has got so many amazing vegetables and they're using them. This one is a zucchini tagliatelle, really light, delicious. So I'm told. Here goes. That is delicious. Tastes like pasta, al dente. Really creamy sauce and all raw. Don't worry, I'll be offsetting it with some ice cream later.
Ciao, hello. Okay, can I have one of these, please? Two of these? Yeah. Grazie. Back in Cisternino, once you've given your order to the butcher, the meat is cooked in the kitchen next door using traditional grills. Beautiful. Beautiful. Grazie. You know, speaking as a former vegetarian, this is worth falling off the meat wagon. Unreal.
I don't think Joe would consider this a full meal without a side of chicken, but for me, it's perfect.
On our website, Ciara O'Doherty from County Carlow got in touch to recommend that we spend a few hours in the old town of the capital, Bari. And if you only have a few hours, the best way to see the place is in a rickshaw.
Hello.
Ciao, come stai?
Bene, grazie.
You can hire a rickshaw for €15 per day. Take your time and do your own peddling. Or pay a bit more, and for €35, you get an hour's guided tour and someone else does the hard work. It's a good way to explore the tiny, narrow back streets. Everywhere you go in Puglia, food is a big deal. And one of my most memorable sights is the lovely ladies hand-rolling fresh pasta in the streets. They're making orecchiette, or little ears, and they sell this fresh pasta to local restaurants. You don't have to enroll on a course to have a foodie holiday here. There's culture and food down every side street. Most people fly into Barry and head straight for the surrounding countryside, but there's plenty to see in the city itself. Here in the Piazza Mercantile, you will find the Column Infama, or the Column of Shame. Back in the 15th century, if you were guilty of theft, owing a debt, or bankruptcy, you were brought here, stripped, your hands tied behind your back, and made to straddle this lion. And any spectators were positively encouraged to spit on you while you were there. I think that's a bit harsh, frankly. Barry's a walled city, and your rickshaw tour is a great way to see the fortifications. Grazie. This is the Basilica of San Nicola, the finest example of Apulian Romanesque architecture in Barry. It is the only church in the world where both Orthodox and Catholic Mass can be celebrated at the same time. And this church holds the relics of the patron saint of Barry, San Nicola, also known as Saint Nicholas, the Wonder Worker. This saint actually became the inspiration for, can you guess it, Santa Claus, thanks to his good works and generosity.
So where do you stay in Puglia? There's plenty of choice, from countryside villas to small B&Bs. Farmhouse villas or masseria options are very popular, especially for large families and groups. At the top end of the market is Villa Masseria Torre Spacata, a 17th century estate built around an olive mill. I particularly liked the gardens, that not only have a rather swish swimming pool and outdoor eating area, but also a surround sound system. The Masseria sleeps up to 14. As well as the main house, there are 4 individual cottages, scattered across the estate. Now for the bad news. It costs from €8,000 per week. This sounds expensive, but this is a great place for an anniversary or party. The price includes a chef and maid service, so if you split the cost between 8, it works out at £1,000 each.
If you prefer to stay in a hotel, a good option in a countryside location is the Grand Hotel La Chiusa di Chietri. It's located on the outskirts of Alberobello. This is a big complex with a good pool, and as you'd expect in this part of the world, a very good restaurant. If you want to stay here, then a standard double will cost you from €120 per room per night, B&B.
If you're looking for a good value room in a busier location, then we'd recommend Antico Mondo, a cute bed and breakfast right in the centre of Polignano a Mare. It's got a great rooftop terrace with a gorgeous view, the perfect place to chill out with a sneaky grappa. A double room here costs from €70 per night.
We organised our trip with Discovery Puglia. There are 2 direct flights a week in the summer from Dublin to Barry. If you'd like any more information, then please visit our website, rte.ie/getaways. Like, I knew nothing about Puglia. I knew like one person whose parents had been here, right? But as loath as I am to use the F word, this is a foodie's paradise. Lots of fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, beautifully prepared, and I thought very reasonably priced.
Absolutely, and what I love is that most people reference Tuscany when they come to Italy, and for me, Apulia has everything and more that Tuscany has, except you melt in more easily. You become a local, or at least you feel that way within days.
It just feels that wee bit more authentic, doesn't it?
Fósil táachta nacht RT 1 milliún punt le machen le caile ag an tír agus támuid le bailach. Time for the nation to weigh in with Operation Transformation at 8:30. That's after Dean and Quiva call a truce in Fair City. But next up, the atmosphere in the Vic is still very hostile, and it only gets worse when Mick sides with Whitney. EastEnders is after the break.